customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you are a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Murray from the DeJulius Group, and thank you for joining us today for the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I'm thrilled you're here because we have the honor of interviewing the great Mike Rayburn. And I'll introduce Mike in just a moment, but I want to give you a few highlights of what we're going to be talking about today. So first, we're going to be talking about becoming a virtuoso. If you know Mike, he's a virtuoso at playing the guitar. And Mike challenges us all to think about what does it mean to become a virtuoso at whatever it is that we do. He'll also talk about the what if mindset and how those two little words, what if, can change the way of thinking for an entire organization, and including one great example of a retailer that asked that same question and really was able to come through for their customers. Another great concept we're going to talk about today is significance over success and what that really means. And finally, at the end of our conversation today, we'll get a couple of great takeaways from Mike on staying fit. Mike is a tremendous athlete, very physically fit, and he's going to share a couple of the things that he does to stay fit and focus on one small change we all can make to really start that road to fitness. So without further ado, let's bring on Mike Rayburn. Well, welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And as promised, we are joined today by Mike Rayburn. Mike, thank you so much for making the time to be here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Now, a lot of our viewers and listeners are familiar with Mike because Mike's been to the Customer Service Revolution conference before. We were just chatting about this back in 2016. Our brains are telling us without actually checking the record book. We think it was 16 where we last saw Mike on our stage. Now, as I mentioned, I know a lot of you out there have seen Mike, heard of Mike. For those of you that have not, let me give you an introduction, the proper introduction, and it's pretty incredible. So Mike is a keynote artist, and some of you may be thinking to yourself, what is a keynote artist? Well, here's what a keynote artist is. It's a lot of things because Mike is a guitar virtuoso, and that word virtuoso is important. It's going to come up in our conversation again during our time today. Mike is also a wonderful comedian, and he's also an awesome motivational speaker. And so when you combine those three talents together, that is how you get a keynote artist. And we'll share more on that in just a little bit. The other thing about Mike that's really cool, he's in the Speaker Hall of Fame as part of the National Speaker Association. For those of you who don't know, yes, there is a Speaker Hall of Fame. It is very exclusive, very exclusive. There's only about, I think, 220-ish in the Hall of Fame, Mike, if I remember correctly.
Something like that. And every time I meet one, I kill them so that I can
So the number is dropping. So he's in the Speaker Hall of Fame. He's given 2 TED Talks, and one was actually a TEDx NASA. So think about that for a minute. Yes, he is presented to rocket scientists.
Well, yeah, that's like, okay, those of us in the world of ideas and information, we think, okay, well, it's not like they're rocket scientists. It's like, yes, they are. Every one of them is a rocket scientist.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, and it worked. It worked great.
You know, it reminded me a little bit of a personal engagement I had once where I was going to speak to a group. It was a small group. It was only about 20 or 30 people. And the last thing the event organizer told me before I went on was, just so you know, most of your audience are attorneys and most of them went to Harvard or Yale. And I was like, thanks for that.
Good knowledge to have. You used that a week ago, but here we go.
Yes. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention about you, Mike, is that you have headlined at Carnegie Hall as a musician, which to me is so cool. And that's where I want to start. My first question to you is headlining Carnegie Hall to me and to probably most of our listeners out there probably sounds like the pinnacle of your career. So I'm just curious, as a musician, so the guitar side of you, do you say to yourself, I've done it, I've made it, I made it to the summit, or is there another stage out there that you're really trying to hit?
This is a great question. First of all, I accept and internalize that I achieved a life goal in doing that. And the real pinnacle of that experience was recording a live at Carnegie Hall CD. And so, very few people in the world can, get to do that. So I do consider it a huge milestone, a huge goal achievement. And so I internalize and I accept that. I think that's important for us as we go along the way. If we have some goal down the road and we don't accept the accolades or the accomplishment of goals along the way, then it's really not as fun a journey. It's not a good a journey as if you're only waiting for something in the future. Accept it along the way. So, and I've gotten to play there at Carnegie 8 times, and so it's huge for me. So yes, it's a huge accomplishment for me, and it is kind of the brass ring for a musician. However, it is far from the end because we're all constantly improving, and we're all if we're on that track, we're all trying to improve. We're all trying to expand our horizons of what's possible, which is exactly what I teach people to do. So there are goals that I have way beyond that. It's not like, hey, I'm done now, coasting, because as I tell audiences, coasting only happens downhill.
Right.
So I can tell you, and I'll just put myself on the line here. I want to create. First of all, I want to perform the Royal Albert Hall in London. Mm-hmm. I would like to create a keynote presentation. I've done this already, but I would like to do it regularly where I use hologram as part of my illustration of the points that I'm sharing. I've done it before. I did it. It's on my website where I perform. I created a hologram of myself. I appear on stage next to me and I play a duet with myself. And
I got to see some of that at NSA last summer, correct?
You had to see the second time we did it. Yes, when I did it with Dan Burris, when we co-chaired, because we co-chaired the huge international, the Influence 2019 conference. And talk about, that's one of the 3 hardest things I've ever done in my life is co-chairing that conference. But I created that. That was based on my experience of having done it in 2014 when I created just this solo thing, which was, again, I've just named 2 of the 3 biggest projects ever in my life. So,
wow.
Yeah. So in other words, there are goals after that. And the other thing is that you say for a musician, because that's true in a traditional musician's track, Carnegie Hall would be on the list, Kennedy Center would be on the list, Royal Albert Hall would be on the list if you're looking for venues. But since we're each different, and I am a keynote artist, my aspirations are more in the area of content and what I can do for organizations and individuals, creating these possibility thinking and world-class performance programs for people to achieve those things. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I love that. That's great. And I'm thinking as you're speaking, some of our audience members may still not completely understand what a keynote performer is. I'm sure that my verbal explanation didn't do it justice. So I would encourage them to check out your website, to Google Mike Rayburn and check out some of the videos to see really what a keynote artist is and some of your past performances. One of my favorite clips of you is when you turn every song into a country song.
Oh yeah,
because you're so great at guitar, but then you're also a comedian, and those 2 melded together is just it's so entertaining.
Thank you. And for what it's worth, the way I sum it up is I teach innovation or possibility thinking and performance, but I teach it in a keynote presentation using guitar and comedy rather than PowerPoint, so it's a lot more fun. And
yes,
so it's a great way. What I do is usually used as a great opener to set the tone for success for the rest of the meeting, or a great closer to send them off with a sense of really inspired to apply what they've learned.
That's great. Now, I need to ask you, at what moment did you realize that you had these 3 incredible talents? And when you think about it, a lot of people out there in the world have maybe one of those talents and that's their career, right? But you have three incredible talents and you've melded them all together to become this keynote artist. At what point did you realize, this I might be onto something here, and this feels really good? And I'm also curious, what was that point like? Was it like the heavens opening? What did that feel like to you?
Well, with any true life change, there can be certain moments where everything's different after that event or that moment or that realization or whatever. But most of them take a transition time. Transformation is usually not instantaneous. For an organization, for an individual, it's still deep and big, but it's not necessarily just one moment it was done. But there was the moment I was performing at Zany's Comedy Club in Nashville, where I used to live. And a friend of mine who is a brilliant songwriter who had stepped into the speaking world a little bit, named Jana Stanfield, she would come up to hear me because we knew each other. I had been a staff songwriter for Sony Music Publishing. So I was signed as a writer. So I was writing for other artists. And I love, that's probably one of my favorite titles, is being a writer, because that's the creative side. So anyway, I was performing at Zany's. I was headlining, and I sat down and I had this little message, that I did at the end, this little motivational message, short, even in a comedy club, right? And Jana came to me afterwards and she said, "Mike, you're clean, you're funny, and you have a message. You're a speaker and you don't even know it." And I said, literally, "What's a speaker? What do you mean?" And she described it. I said, "You mean like a motivational speaker?" And she said, "Yeah." And I was like, I don't know about that. But it planted the seed. And that's the first thing that I try to do with audiences, is plant that seed. Like actually to open that idea, because what she did was open up the realm of what's possible for me. And so that's what I try to do for audiences. And then, so I pursued it a little more. And I had been a guitarist and comedian, been doing that for many years, seasoned in front of every audience in the world. I love it now when meeting planners come to me and they say, "Well, Mr. Rayburn, we just wanted you to know that some of the people tonight may have been drinking." And I'm like, I think I can handle this. I've done third show on Saturday night at a comedy club where they come in drunk to abuse the comedian. So I can handle this. So anyway, I always had what my dad in 11th grade gave me a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which is by Maxwell Maltz. And it's basically about the power of belief, power of the mind, power of focus, the power of mindset. And I believed, I got into it, right? And this heady reading for an 11th grader. And so I was always doing these like goal setting and mindset and visualization of what of goals and outcomes that I want. But all my friends were artists and they didn't care about that stuff, or they were in business world and they didn't care about this. And so once she said that, I saw that I could do something no one else has done. And that's what I love to do in life. I want to do things that haven't been done. I want to think thoughts that haven't been thought. So I realized there's nobody doing a keynote presentation, teaching the tools that I'm going to be sharing, and illustrating them with, I don't want to sound proud, but advanced guitar work. I've got a degree in classical guitar. I know what I'm doing, Carnegie Hall, and comedy, but to illustrate the points rather than PowerPoint and statistics and more of a boring kind of thing. And not that all people who do that are boring, but, can get that way. So I saw that I could do something that had not been done. And so doing the hologram is something no one has done. And I got to do it. I did the first ever cross-country concert tour on bicycle.
Oh, yes.
Back in 2000. Again, something no one had done. And so I saw that I could do that. So I pursued it, and I made the choice then that there's a lot of speakers who want to be a speaker and they look for a message. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to teach what I know works because I've practiced it. It's the stuff that has worked for me. It's the stuff that got me to Carnegie Hall. It's the stuff that got me to the Hall of Fame or whatever. And I wanted to teach those things. And if they work, great. And if they don't, then I'll go on to something else. But I didn't want to just contrive a message. And so it's worked. Bottom line, together. So there wasn't a particular moment to get to your question, but it was this slow transition. And once that vision for hold it, I could do something no one's done. Then it's like the planets aligned. and I teach people this, when you get that and you act on it, your company goes into hyperspace. I mean, it'll transform your results. Your career, my income quintupled after that over the next few years. It just opened every door, but we have to create the space for that. And that's what I try to do with audiences.
It's really an amazing story when you think about it, how one comment, right, that one seed that was planted snowballed into the career that you have built. And you're so right. No one else is doing what you do. No one else goes out there and performs, entertains, and delivers an amazing message. So it's very interesting how that all started.
Well, then, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. You mentioned how you had some great experience working in the late night comedy clubs. And it made me think of one of the things that I've seen you present on before that I really like when you talk about listening to your hecklers. Yep. Right? So often we think of hecklers like, just block them out, keep going. And I was thinking about it a little bit. And in today's day and age, we all kind of have hecklers, right? We all have people that at work that maybe want to see us fail, or especially today with social media, there's always someone who just wants to say something negative out there, respond to a post or whatever. We all have hecklers today. So I was curious, when you started to listen to your own advice and listen to hecklers, what sort of lessons did you learn about yourself, and how did that help you to grow from that feedback?
Great point. Yeah, I say, because the way I say it in the presentation is that I used to think as a comedian, I'm the only one who gets hecklers. And then I say to the audience, but you get hecklers, don't you? People yelling at you about the way you do your job, not necessarily with your best outcome in mind. And they're trying to tear you down. They're trying to mess with you. They're trying to get in your head. They're trying to just maybe make a name for themselves or, draw attention to themselves. And I say, pay attention to the hecklers, because there's quite often a message for you, a benefit for you in what they're saying. It's just not wrapped as a gift. There's a gift. I say there's a gift for you in what they're saying. It's just not wrapped as a gift, and it's wrapped as a detraction. As a mean thing. And so, all critique or all comedy is usually based in truth of some sort. And if it's only the way that person took something, it's a good idea to get that perspective. A heckler, someone who's looking to bring you down, is looking for the weakness that you have, is looking for the place that you're vulnerable, is looking for the thing that you don't want made front page or known. And they're doing just that. They're pointing it out to you. Now, it sucks when they do that. And I have lines, and I don't even have to use canned lines. Luckily, I get in the space and I can just do it. But I will deal with them in the moment, but I'll look back later and go, what was it that made them say that? What was it that caused them? Because they might be revealing a weakness you need to know about. They might be revealing a flaw or a vulnerability that you need to address. I had someone once yell out, I was playing a comedy. The first time I ever played that comedy club, Zany's. First time I ever played one. I had done comedy forever at colleges, but I'd never done a comedy club. And my one fear was hecklers. And so this guy, the Zany's gave me a 15-minute spot in front of, because my agent knew them, so they wouldn't normally give a first-time comedian 15 minutes. But they gave me 15 minutes in front of the headliner. And so I went out there, and one fear of a heckler, it was a packed, sold-out crowd. So they're jammed on the front of the stage. And I start with this solo guitar thing with just one hand. I'm just playing with one hand on the guitar. And somebody yells, "Free bird." How many times have you heard that, right? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I kept playing with one hand, doing my little tap thing. And there was "Free bird." Yeah, and then a guy said, "No, I want to hear Free bird." Like, he made it to the point where I couldn't just pass it off. So eventually, in the first 15 seconds, my worst fear came true.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I let go. And what I did was I said, it just popped into my head. And I gave him the bird, and I said, "There's your free bird." Okay. and the audience went nuts. And I went, "I'm home." Okay. Yeah. So what that did, though, was it pointed out, or it made me remember, it made me realize that it's not just in a music show that people yell stupid requests. It's going to be in my keynote as well sometimes. It said, hey, if you know, for instance, we know you laughed at when I said Freebird because you've heard people say that before in an audience. Okay, we've all heard people yell, Freebird, Freebird. It's from the live album that Skinner did when they said, what song is it you want to hear? And everybody yells Freebird. And so it said, you know what? I need to have a response for this every time. Now, I don't do that response because keynote, you wouldn't do that. That's a comedy club thing. And that's as risque as I get. I'm not risque. So think about it this way. When someone yells at you for something, or they point out something, or they say, you just do this, or blah, 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 something mean, deal with it in the moment. But then look back on it and say, well, what is the essence of what they're saying there? Is this something I need to be prepared for? Is it something I need to solve now so that I can deal with it when it comes up again? Is it pointing out a weakness that I need to change? That's where the value of the hecklers, what we is huge, and we just need to get past the emotion, the negativity. Like you feel like you've been insulted, and so you want to move back. Okay, that might be in the moment, but let's not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. That makes sense.
It does. You know, you said something, Mike, that really stood out to me. You said that when someone is heckling you, it's coming from their perspective. Yeah. And so someone in my shoes that does keynotes, but the majority of the work that I'm doing is facilitating workshops for the Julius group. It made me think that if, and I don't necessarily get hecklers that yell out, but we get feedback. And if someone is not understanding from their perspective, chances are good that I didn't do a good enough job telling the story or wasn't clear with that story. So that perspective that they are giving is probably important.
Exactly. Hecklers are just doing an evaluation card in a really crappy way.
Right.
Okay. And so the evaluation cards are the same thing. And you and I both know that when we get, let's say we perform for 500 people and we got 499 awesome reviews, but we got one who didn't like it, we focus on the one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? And some of the stuff you have to let go of. Some of the stuff you have to realize, that's just that person's perspective. But perspective is huge. And I had one recently. I had one just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Somebody wrote something, sent me a Facebook message about my What If Weekly. And I encourage everyone to sign up for my What If Weekly because it's totally free. And it's a short tip that you can use this week to think differently, to think more positively, to think better, to make your life a little bit better. You just go to my website, mikerayburn.com/blog, or just anywhere on there. You can sign up for the What If Weekly. Anyway, somebody wrote, I got more shares on that 3 weeks ago. It was about the coronavirus and looking at the positive. Like, what if there's something good about this? And that's my, what if is my message. And so I say, I know this sucks, but what if there's something good about it? What would it be? And it's been more, I've had more retweets, shares, postings of this elsewhere, reactions online, reactions everywhere to this one, except one guy. And he ripped me a new one about it, saying that I was saying this thing. And it was important to know that perspective. And sometimes it's just, nope, that was just that guy. That's not me. I really assessed it and I realized it wasn't. So not all the hecklers' points are ones that you're going to apply.
Sure. But
it was nice to know, okay, he did have that perspective, so that is possible. But there were so many others in the positive side that I didn't worry about.
Right. Great segue, because the next thing I wanted to ask you was about the what if mentality. And there were two concepts I just wanted you, if you could, give our audience an overview. It's part of the great tools that you share with people when you're on stage. But there's two concepts that you talk about that I just wanted you to expand upon a little bit. One is becoming a virtuoso, right? And how you talked about that with guitar for you. And I find it so interesting that, our minds always go to musical instrument, we think virtuoso, and you say, no, it's really whatever you apply it to, which I think is a great concept. So if you start with virtuoso, and then if you could explain a little bit of your what if mentality.
Sure. And I'll go reverse. Let me start with the what if.
Sure.
The what if mindset. I encourage people to ask the question, hey, what if we could? By the way, every time you ask the question, what if, you will open up the possibilities. What if we could do that? What would it look? Oh, I know we never have, but what if we tried that? Okay. And every major accomplishment, invention, and victory in human history started in some way or another with a bold what if question. So I say, so why aren't we asking this on a regular basis? I speak for a whole bunch of audiences who are traditionally, and I say that in quotes, traditionally considered left brain, not creative, more linear thinking. A lot of my number one sector is financial services, a lot of healthcare, a lot of like engineers and accountants and facilities managers and things like that, who are not necessarily known for, it's not like they're creative director for Google, it's not like they're, but they're all creative. And so interestingly, they just need a formula to become creative and to access it, not become, but access it. And so asking the question, what if, is a formula. If you ask the question when somebody says, no, we can't do that, and you say, I know we can, I know, but what if we had to? How would we go about it? Just for fun. And what it does is it takes the fear. We all have many fears, but there are 3 fears that hold us back most often: fear of failure, fear of success, fear of rejection. And so it takes those and it sets them aside. It says, okay, let's just set those aside for a second. Suppose we had to do this. How would we go about it? And it opens up possibilities. And I'll give you a direct example of how this worked. It happened 1 year ago. And this is how this applies. Just one area where this applied. And you'll remember that because it was national news. There's a company called Orscheln, whom I've presented for a number of times. They're awesome. They own about 170 farm and home retail stores throughout the Midwest, 11 states in the Midwest. And so it's kind of a more farm version of Home Depot, right? And they're awesome stores. It's an awesome organization. They're very positive, very great group. And I presented for all their managers. And I showed them how this works for problem solving. So this is the area, it works for everything, but this is particularly problem solving. So one of them is the manager of the store. A guy named Evan is the manager of the store in Seward, Nebraska. And if you remember, almost exactly a year ago, Nebraska had horrible, devastating floods. And he and his team needed to open the store at 8 a.m. They show up at 6:30 in the morning, and they find their all but one tiny section of their parking lot is underwater and frozen. It's Nebraska. They go in the store. It's had 2 inches of flood water throughout the entire store. The water's receded, but it's a muddy, sloppy mess throughout the entire store. There's no way they're going to open by 8 a.m. They're not even sure they're going to be open the next day. And the problem was not just a day's revenue or 2 days revenue lost, but the community is depending on the products they sell to dig out for themselves, right? Shovels and, that kind of thing. So everyone's just assessing the damage. And Evan had just heard my presentation, and he did this. I love this. He did it exactly like I teach it. And it's nice to hear that. He gathered the team together and he said, look, I know this is crazy, but what if we had to open by 8 a.m. today? How would we do it? First of all, pause the story. That causes everyone's focus to go from problem and scarcity to solution and abundance. Okay? It switched the entire focus of the whole group. And so they started brainstorming. So here's what they did. They posted somebody at the front to point cars in the direction of where they could park. There was no way they were going to clean that store out in an hour. But what they could do was clean the front section out. So they cleaned out the front near the registers. They brought customers in and they stood them at the register and said, what do you need? And they brought in a couple extra staff, and they had an employee, go throughout the store, gather the goods that they needed, bring it to the front in the register, check them out, and they went on their way. They opened at 8 a.m. They had a full day's revenue, plus they built this bond with the community because the community saw them going above and beyond. That's how it works. So I took a bit of time there to explain that, but it's a beautiful story. And they wrote me to tell me, Mike, check this out. So that's the what if mindset. Become a virtuoso. Most people, even successful people, never make the choice to become their personal best. Instead, they rise to okay, getting by, good enough, what's required, okay? Rather than going on to what the best that they could possibly do. And so even successful adults never make this choice, a lot of them. And so really, especially when it comes to customer service, we want you to be at your best. We want you to, I want to depend on you to really go out of your way to solve my challenge, to, get me the right product or the right service, et cetera. And so I teach people to make that choice. And for instance, you've already said, you, Dave, have already said that you read the evaluations. We talked about the evaluations,
yes.
right? We want to look at those. Why do you look at those? You don't look at those just to see how you did. You're looking at those. I know you. You're looking at those to see how you can improve because of them, right? Because you're going beyond what's just required. You're going to what's your personal best. You're on it's a different course than what others are prescribing for you. It's your own self-directed course of becoming a virtuoso at whatever your business is. So I implore people to become a virtuoso financial advisor, a virtuoso facilities manager, a virtuoso healthcare provider, and then to act on that. Okay. And there's an exercise I have that sort of list what that means in their lives. And some of them are similar, overlapping. For instance, get coaching, have a mentor, read in your field every day. Things that we could do easily, but we just don't because we didn't make that decision. Right. So I ask people to make the decision to become a virtuoso and then to act on that. And we try to make a list of what would it take for me to become a virtuoso. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I love both those concepts. Really, really helpful.
And there are actually now 2 keynotes. I can make them part of the same keynote, which I've done in the past. But now the what if is all by itself because that's a huge thing. And I can also do the entire keynote on become a virtuoso. So it's about innovation for world-class performance.
That's great. Yeah, you brought up something with the what if mentality. I wanted to get your opinion on this. We're both at our home offices today. I'm not exactly sure when this podcast is going to air for the first time, but right now we're in stay-at-home orders during COVID-19 that the whole world's going through and is really hitting us here in the U.S. right now. And so I'm just curious. You mentioned your what if mentality towards COVID-19. I'm just wondering if you could share some of the thoughts you had applying what if to that and what you're talking to your clients about right now.
Sure, this is huge. And there's never been a more pertinent time for the what if mindset because we need to find new options. What I teach ultimately is about intentional and strategic reinventing our lives and our careers and our businesses intentionally, not just because the world forces it. Well, the world just forced it. And all of us are going to have to rethink everything. And we will not come out of this unchanged. The economy will change, work will change, the way we do business will change, the way we look at everything will change, jobs will disappear, jobs will appear. And right now is an extraordinary opportunity. If you look at, it's amazing the number of major companies like IBM and Walmart and others that started during recessions. This started during times of challenge and problem. Okay, the huge companies because they saw something different. First of all, if you're listening to this, I'm guessing you are a leader in some way or another. I think we're all leaders, but you're a leader in some way or another. Right. And as a leader, it is your job to not be discouraged right now. It is your job to step up and show the way, to show hope, to have faith, to encourage others. And that means in some way or another asking, what if there's something good about this? Where are the benefits in this? And I'm not discounting the fact that this is fatal. And there are people who are sick and dying from this. I get that. But most people are not. And we need to stay positive about it. So that's one point. The other is this is an extraordinary opportunity for us each to, within the idea of serving, we're talking about customer service, right? Within the concept of serving others, how do we transform? You talked about creating transformation. How do we transform what we do and how we do it with the idea of serving? There's 2 sides to, when we talk about success, there's 2 sides to it. There's success, which you would look at as revenue, profit, reputation, fame, accomplishment. And then there's significance. And that's people whose lives are changed because of this. And what I'm asking, usually most of us, and this is not wrong, but most of us, we strive for success. And then we take the winnings from success and we use those for significance. We donate to a charity. We help others along the way. We become a mentor, whatever. What I'm saying is, let's flip the script. What if right now, during COVID-19, we step out in significance? Look for your neighbor who can't. I've got a neighbor downstairs, Fran, who she's 80 years old. She can't get to she literally can't go to the store. Well, she needs somebody to do that for her. So I do that. I'm not trying to go, hey, good guy, but you have those opportunities. All of us have those opportunities. And in doing that, and in combination with looking for opportunities, we have the chance to transform who we are. My What If Weekly this week is going to be about who will you become because of this? What will it say about your character when we look back? Because this is going to be as big or bigger than what 9/11 was. This is more on the level of, where were you when we dropped the bomb on Japan? Where were you when World War II, when Pearl Harbor was hit? Where were you when, we're talking, this is a world event. This will be historic. And it's an opportunity for us all to transform, to grow, to become greater than what we thought. And it's about stepping out. To me, it's about stepping out in significance, service. That's why I was so psyched, honestly, to get to talk to you now about in the concept of customer service, because that's the word service. And interestingly, service and purpose almost rhyme. We find purpose where we find service. So when we step out with purely the heart to serve, it's amazing what's going to happen. So I want people to ask that. What if there's something good about it? What if there's an opportunity? And I don't mean to be opportunistic, but I mean an opportunity for growth, for something new, for serving the new economy, the way things are going to be after this. I think it's a huge opportunity for each of us, especially those of us who are leaders, and especially those of us who get the idea of service.
Absolutely. And I hadn't thought of it in that perspective until you said it, Mike, but significance over success is a great framework, especially now, especially in the times that we're facing now. How can we search for that and find that significance? I love it. Great stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Here's my last question for you, Mike. And it's a personal question. And It's a personal question for two reasons. One is because it's about your personal life, but also it's a personal question because I want to know. You are an athlete. So you are a dual athlete, you're a cyclist, you're a runner, you're a surfer, you are a hiker, you're an active guy. And if you've ever seen you on stage before, it's easy to tell that you keep yourself very physically fit. So my question to you is, knowing what you do, knowing the amount of days that you're on the road and in front of audiences at all hours of the day, depending on what the event is, I'm curious, how do you keep yourself in such great shape when you are going through the schedule that you have to keep up?
Great question. It all comes down to, first of all, the mindset is, do you value this or not? And I do value it. I value being capable, being strong, being active, and feeling physically good. And so if you value that, then you just plain find a way. So every hotel, I say almost every, but every hotel has a fitness room of some sort. Okay? So there's a way to do it. Right now, I've developed and we're talking outside of COVID-19, but even within the concept of COVID-19, I found, number one, I've got a buddy who's a personal trainer who's doing online exercise, workouts. And I came up with my own workout for right here in the house, which I would much rather go to a gym. But in the meantime, I can't. So I'm going to do I have 200 push-ups, 250 ab core reps of some sort, and 4.5 minutes of planks, 1.5 minutes at a time. And then I hike. I do extreme hikes, meaning like we're going to go there, but there's no path. So how are we going to get there? Climb up the creek, and I have a friend that I do this with on a regular basis. And then cycling, and you just do them as you can. And then the other side to this is how you eat. And I'm not an extreme, like, yes, I eat some sweets, and yes, I eat some things that are probably not great for me. But I'm 6'3". I weigh always between 180 and 190. If I get up to 190, I know I better I'm not going to allow myself to go past that. And I don't have to worry about going too far below 180 because I eat a lot. But so I encourage people to come up with markers. Like, I know at 190, whoa, I better, back this off. Right now, I'm right smack in the middle. I'm 185. So I've set that personal limit for myself. And it's because it's something I value. I know that there are people who have struggles with weight, people who have struggles with eating, and I am sympathetic to that. I understand that. There's been times that I've been overweight. And then when you're tall and thin, you can hide an extra 20 pounds by just wearing a baggy shirt, And,
right.
and I've done it, it's been a long time, but I did that. And so I understand that people struggle with that. And so I encourage them to make one change, one small change, but commit to it with your life. Like one change, okay, I'm not going to do this snack that I always do. Okay, I am going to walk 30 minutes every day, or I am going to, whatever. Just do one change and make that a lifestyle change that you're just doing. And then once that's in place, make another one and make another one. So anyway, for me on the road, you can always do. I've done things where I've run up and down the stairs of hotel rooms. I mean,
yeah,
up just in the it's usually it's just concrete back there. It's not made up. It's more almost it's like an air conditioned fire escape. And I'll do that. I'll go to their gym. I will try to make sure not to eat too much. I will go running somewhere. I will do occasionally once or twice. I've been able to bring my bike when I drive. But anyway, I also don't stick to just one thing. Luckily, I'm not trying to compete. The only thing I've ever competed in is cycling. But I don't try to compete. So it's not like I'm trying to get great at one thing. And the other, here's another, this is huge. My buddy, his name is Tony Stabile, and he's a personal trainer. And he's great. He's here in Vegas. And he said something that changed my life. He said, Mike, after 40 years old, your goal in working out, your number one goal in working out is to not get hurt. So he said, you're not going to do a personal best. Those are done. Yep. You're not going to, be in the Tour de France. You're not. So don't get hurt, because when you get hurt, then we get derailed and it's hard to get back to it. And as you get older, it doesn't take much to lose it, but it takes a whole lot to gain it back. And so he said, the key is don't get hurt to get you out of the game. So I don't have to, I've realized, I don't have to push this like I'm trying to become the next Olympic athlete. I can push this and just do it and reap the benefits because I can do it again tomorrow. Does that make sense?
Right. It sure does. That's a great mindset and great tips, because I know I struggle sometimes on the road. I know a lot of other people do. As you know, Mike, from being at the Customer Service Revolution Conference in the past, there's a lot of road warriors. They're leaders that are out there to all their sites. They're out visiting their teams, that sort of thing. And so I know a lot of people struggle with that once you're on the road, finding the time, still managing the rest, all those things that we know are important. So those are some great tips. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you so much for your time today and joining us. So again, everyone, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast with Mike Rayburn. Until next time, have a great day, and we'll see you soon.
We would like to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. Please, if you haven't done so, subscribe to this podcast, the Customer Service Revolution, on the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Also, please write a review and share this podcast with your colleagues, friends, clients, anyone you think would benefit from joining the Customer Service Revolution. And for anything else you may need, please visit our podcast homepage at tdg.click/podcast. Thank you, and we will see you next time.